Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped you're here today because we're diving into something absolutely wild. We're taking ancient spiritual anatomy and mapping it directly onto our modern biology. We're going to look at the human body not just as some mechanical meat suit, bones and tissue, but as a highly advanced, fully integrated energetic circuit.
Think about it. What if your physical biology and your spiritual consciousness were actually wired to the exact same circuit? What if the physical health of your organs and the spiritual awareness of your mind weren't two separate things, but just different expressions of the exact same energy? We're so used to putting the physical and spiritual into totally different boxes, right? But the ancient texts and honestly modern biofield science are telling us a very different story. It's a completely unified system.
So to really get this, we've got to talk about the core concept, the chakra. The word itself comes from Sanskrit, and it literally translates to wheel or spinning wheel. But look, esoteric traditions make it very clear that these aren't just poetic metaphors. No way. They are literal psycho-energetic vortices. Think of them as massive organizing centers that span across multiple dimensions of who you are: mental, astral, etheric. But the really crucial part? They act as literal transducers. They take incredibly subtle, high-frequency energy and translate it down into dense, physical signals in your body.
And what's crazy is that modern neurobiology is actually starting to map these ancient wheels. Researchers are looking at these organizing centers and connecting them to the human electromagnetic biofield. So instead of just waving chakras away as pure mysticism, science is showing a direct correlation between these energetic hubs, our major nerve plexuses, and our endocrine glands. We are literally looking at a biological map of spiritual energy.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll establish the mechanics of this integrated circuit. Then, we'll take a journey upward. We'll start at the lower chakras, representing our earthly foundations, move up to the vital bridge of the heart, and then ascend into the higher chakras of cosmic consciousness. And finally, we'll wrap up with the dramatic force that actually powers the whole shebang, Kundalini.
All right, part one, the human integrated circuit. Moving right into part two, the lower chakras, our earthly foundations. Let's establish a really important foundational rule for this whole journey. We are dealing with one unified system. Energy flows through subtle channels called nadis, and when there's an energetic block or psychological trauma, at an emotional or mental level, it trickles right down this circuit and ultimately manifests physically as a symptom or disease in the body. Down at the base of our spine, that's where gross matter and primal survival instincts live, and the spatial logic of this lower triad is just brilliant. We start at the base with the root chakra, or Muladhara, which physically precipitates as the adrenal glands. Move up just below the navel, and you've got the sacral chakra, Svadhisthana, a 6-petaled orange center linked right to the gonads. Just above that is the 10-petaled yellow solar plexus, Manipura, directly tied to the pancreas. The ancients perfectly mapped these dense earthly energy centers to the exact physical glands that run our most primal bodily functions.
Now, what's really interesting is the specific esoteric anatomy assigned to this first wheel, the Muladhara. It sits right at the base of the spine. And clairvoyant observations, like the ones recorded by Charles Leadbeater, describe this chakra as having 4 distinct spokes or petals that visually form a cross. It radiates this really dense, fiery orange-red color, and it's entirely connected to the earth element. This is literally your grounding wire.
And here is where the micro absolutely perfectly mirrors the macro. On a physical level, the adrenal glands secrete hormones to manage our fight-or-flight response, right? They handle physical stress. Psychologically, this perfectly mirrors the spiritual function of the root chakra, basic survival, grounding, and just feeling that fundamental right to exist. The physical rush of adrenaline is the exact same energy as the spiritual drive for survival, just vibrating in a much denser frequency.
All right, part 3, the heart, our vital bridge.
So now we enter the really transformative middle section of our circuit. This is the vital bridge where the dense matter of the lower chakras meets the pure volatile spirit of the upper chakras. The heart chakra, or Anahata, is located right in the spine behind the sternum. And notice the massive upgrade here. We've gone from the 4 little spokes of the root chakra to a greatly expanded capacity of 12 spokes or petals. It radiates this brilliant, glowing, golden, or sometimes green color, and corresponds to the air element. It is the absolute center of compassion.
The physical correspondence here is just mind-blowing. This center manifests as the thymus gland. Now, biologically, the thymus regulates your immune system. It literally teaches your body to know what is self and what is other so it can protect you. Psychologically, Anahata regulates universal love. It's the great integrator. It takes all those lower primal survival passions and transforms them into global consciousness, empathy, and the profound ability to instinctively feel the joys and sorrows of others.
The way these forces actually flow is just brilliant. The primary force rushes in from the astral plane, sweeping right through those 12 golden spokes. A yellow ray shoots outwards, literally interpenetrating our physical blood to carry vitality all over the body, while at the exact same time, it directs a powerful stream straight up to the brain to unlock high philosophical thought.
Moving on to Part 4, Higher Chakras and Cosmic Consciousness.
Okay, we're now moving our awareness into the upper echelon of the human biocircuit. Up here, physical density pretty much gives way to pure, highly volatile spiritual energy. Let's map out these master regulators. At the throat, we've got the 16-petaled blue Vishuddha chakra, corresponding to the thyroid gland. Moving up between the brows is the 2-petaled indigo ajna chakra, linked to the pituitary body. And finally, at the absolute top of the head, the Sahasrara, or crown chakra, precipitating physically as the pineal gland. Now pay attention to this. These upper physical glands are the exact master glands that control and dictate instructions to the entire rest of your endocrine system. As above, literally, so below.
The esoteric anatomy of the crown chakra, the Sahasrara, is just breathtaking. Situated right at the top of the head, ancient texts call it the 1,000-petaled lotus. Clairvoyant investigation gets super specific, noting it has exactly 960 outer spokes and a subsidiary central whirlpool of 12 inner undulations. Think about that contrast for a second. We started at the base of the spine with just 4 petals, and now we are at nearly 1,000. It's described as having a gleaming white center flushed with gold, vibrating at almost inconceivable speeds with indescribable chromatic effects.
So biologically, the pineal gland is this tiny, pine-cone-shaped structure right in the center of our brain. It handles light sensitivity and regulates our circadian rhythms. But psychologically and spiritually, it is the ultimate biological receiver for cosmic energy, pure consciousness, and ultimate enlightenment. This tiny physical gland is effectively the biological antenna through which transcendent, universal truth enters the human vehicle.
When you consider the vast, dense array of those outer petals and the central core of the crown center, it's incredibly complex. When this is fully awakened, it completes the astral life. For certain advanced individuals, this chakra aligns perfectly with the physical pineal gland, creating a direct, unhindered line of communication that links the physical brain straight to the higher, lower mental planes. Which brings us to Part 5, Kundalini and Spiritual Evolution.
So the big question is, how do these centers actually wake up? Because this entire circuit we just mapped requires a dormant evolutionary force to power it online, and that force is Kundalini. It's often described as a serpent fire or liquid fire. It starts off completely dormant at the base of your spine, but when it's awakened, it travels in a sequential, spiraling rush right up the spinal column. First, it vivifies the root. Then it moves to the navel to awaken astral sensitivity, up to the heart for true astral comprehension. It pierces the throat and the brow, opening inner sight and clairaudience. And finally, it culminates in an absolute blaze at the crown, granting perfect, enlightened consciousness.
Once this sequential rush of liquid fire is fully complete and every single chakra is vivified, the individual achieves something known as continuity of consciousness. At this point, the barrier between the waking physical mind and the spiritual astral planes completely dissolves. Your human integrated circuit is fully online, bridging the dense physical world and the subtle dimensions entirely.
But, and this is a massive but, the source texts issue the most solemn warnings about trying to force this process prematurely. Nature has built-in protections for a reason. The subtle etheric web, especially at the top of the head, normally acts as a kind of sieve. This atomic web safely filters out the coarser astral influences and protects your physical brain. If Kundalini is forced upward before your physical body is purified and your mind is truly ready, this sieve can be utterly destroyed. And that leaves the individual entirely unprotected against overwhelming and extremely dangerous unfiltered astral forces.
Which leaves us with this final, profound question to really chew on.
If our biological endocrine system, from the adrenals all the way up to the pineal gland, is truly the physical precipitation of a vast integrated spiritual circuit, what energetic frequencies are you currently tuning your own body to? Because every thought, every emotion, and every action is rippling through your chakras and directly into your bloodstream. I really hope this explainer leaves you eager to explore your own energetic and physical balance. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and as always, keep learning.